September shining star on your face, reasons, devotion. Now, book lovers, once again, I am telling you that these are but a handful of the many songs written and performed by legendary R&B group or band Earth, Wind, and Fire, also known as the Elements or EWF. Now, in the first half of the video, which I uploaded earlier this week, I told you that I read 2 books, and I did. Now, the first one was on Philip Bailey, Braving the Elements of Earth, Wind, and Fire. But the other book I read, which I also mentioned in that other video, was based on the actual founding member of the group, Maurice White, and his book is entitled Maurice White, My Life with Earth, Wind, and Fire. And this is the book that I will be discussing in this video. So as usual, grab your snack and you know what to do. I would say come on, but I hate ending sentences and prepositions. So go ahead, make yourselves comfortable, and let's chat a bit. Hello, book lovers. Blue-Eyed Black Devil here. Visitors, should you happen upon the channel, feel free to join us. We would love to have you here. And to my subscribers, welcome or welcome back. Maurice White, born December 19th, 1941 in Memphis, Tennessee, to parents John White and Edna Parker. Now, one day, a 21-year-old Edna Parker sat her 4-year-old son down, and Maurice White, and told him that she had to leave home in search of work. She left him in the custody of an elderly lady by the name of Elvira Robinson. Maurice referred to her from that day forth as Mama, and he referred to his biological mother, Edna Parker, as Mother Dear to the day they died. He loved them just that much. Now, as far as his father goes, he passed away when Maurice was only 5 years old, but from what Maurice remembered about him, it wasn't very good or present or pleasant. He used to talk about how mean he was. And so that was that on that. Now, Elvira Robinson was not biologically related to Maurice, but she did take him in and care for him, and I don't think he could have been loved any better had he been raised with his biological mom. But now, from age 4 till 12, he never laid eyes on his mother in the flesh. And he heard from her sporadically. Well, at age 12, but she had to have kept in touch with Elvira because she seemed to always know when, school would have breaks and stuff. So on one of these breaks, he was 12 years old, and she sent for him to come to Chicago. He got there, he met his stepfather, which from here on, I am going to refer to him as Dad or Father, because that is how Maurice referred to him. But he met his dad, Dr. Verdine Adams Sr. Yes, his father was a podiatrist. And then he met 6 of his siblings, and then 2 more would be born after Maurice moved there in later years. And that visit went on very well. But one day, later on that year, he came home. I think he was on spring break. He goes in and he sees a big, gigantic package in the living room, big box with his name on it. He opened it, and it was a bike. His dad had sent him a bike, and oh, how he loved that bike. Oh, he just loved it. And he just took it from there. Now, his mama was a maid, and so she obviously couldn't afford much in terms of like clothes. He loved clothes. But the only shameful time of his childhood had to do with his mother not being, the only clothes he had was whatever clothes that the children she took care of outgrew, or she could go to the thrift store from time to time. Well, he never held it against her because he knew that she was doing all she could do. So he just had to swallow it and go on. Well, in somewhere in middle, now one day, this what happened. I'm jumping the gun. Around the age of 14, he came home one day and found Mama lying in the floor. She had been sick, and so he was like, I have got to go to work because her income was the only thing coming in. And she tried to tell him, no, all you supposed to do is go to school. But he said, no, Mama, we can't keep going like this. I have got to go to work. And he did. Well, when the next time the rent was due, he bought the money to her, and she accepted it very graciously. And she stopped nagging him from that point on about him working. He was working, and he was still going to school. Now, around that same time, he met Booker T. Jones, who had a group back in the day. I really don't want to name the group because knowing me, I may be wrong, but I do know they had a big hit called Green Onions, and that was released sometime in the late 60s, early 70s. But yeah, Booker T fronted that group. Now, Booker was a couple of years younger than Maurice. But he was in middle school one day, Maurice was, and he wandered into the band room because he knew he'd always loved drums. Booker T was in there tinkering around with different instruments. And they met each other, and they were thick as thieves from that day on, along with another one of their friends, Eddie. They piled around and did everything together. They ended up, from time to time, getting little gigs here and there. Well, at age 18, standing on the stage of his high school graduation, he looks out in the audience, and who does he see? Mother dear. He had no idea she was going to be there. And he said she looked very proud, she felt like he had a purpose in life. He was in a good headspace, I guess you could say. Well, after the ceremony back home, she offered him to move with her to Chicago. And he just, I say he just jumped at it, but the only thing that he was reluctant about was leaving Mama. Now, she had gotten over whatever happened to her. She had some chronic health issues like high blood pressure, high cholesterol and stuff, and she was older. And he just didn't want to leave her. Eventually, though, she told him, listen, and I'm paraphrasing now, life is meant to be lived, and you need to keep moving forward. There is nothing that is holding you here. Basically, go and be great, or go and become great. So that's that. With her blessing, he did go ahead and move to Chicago. After moving or relocating to Chicago, his father got him a job as an orderly working at the hospital where he worked. That was all fine, well, and good. And Maurice decided he wanted to move out on his own and on his off time, he would go in search of gigs, and he found them. He gradually began to make a name for himself in Chicago as well. In fact, the gigs were coming in so fast and so much that he decided to quit his job at the hospital. But as soon as he did that, the gigs dried up. Oh no. Now here he is, unemployed. No real way to pay rent and, be able to feed himself and all of this stuff. Eventually, though, he had what I like to call a come to Jesus moment. He came to him in prayer. And he just laid everything out and explained what was going on. And he never said why me or whatever. And after that confession and that time with his talk with the Lord, things slowly but surely started to turn around for him. It wasn't immediately, of course, but he did start to pick up more and more gigs. Now, if you are familiar with me or my channel, then you know that I really don't delve much into why these people are famous, because you can find that out basically without even looking. It's just right there. What I like to do, before I go on any further, please excuse any noise you may hear in the background. That's my 17-year-old daughter. She tends to get a bit animated when she's on the phone or whatever she's in there doing. So, but back to my video. This is what I'm gonna do. Talk about his relationships with other people. Now, one of the reasons he decided he wanted to move out when he did from his parents' home is because by nature he was a very private person. He's a loner. He is his own best company. However, he was able to work with and enjoy being in the company of others. It's just that he didn't mind if he was by himself. That was A-okay, dying with him. Now, as for his personal relationships with people, he was pretty much close with his parents and siblings. His mother and, his relationship with Mother Dear, they were close, but not as parent and child. They were more brother and sister. That was what it was, and I can understand that, because you have to remember, she was in and out of his life, mostly out for the first 18 years of his life. So they still remain, they forced a relationship anyway. It might have been a time or two he realized, well, I'll talk about that in a little bit. But now, as for the band members, they pretty much all got along. You might have an occasional disagreement or spat within the band, but there didn't seem to be any permanent hard feelings there between he and the other bandmates. But the women. Maurice has 3 children by 3 different women. His first child, he did not find out about until she was either 5 or 6 years old. He has a daughter named Hamaya, and I may be mispronouncing that. Hamia or Hamaya. I believe it's how it's pronounced, one of those two. Please forgive me if I'm messing it up. But when he found out about her, Hamaya's mother's name was Evelyn. When he found out that she had his child, he did get a house for them to live in, but he really was not in her life at all, not much. Even to the day that this book was written, he said at very best, they had a strained relationship. Now, he married one time to a lady named Marilyn. And they had one son together, Cabron. I believe his daughter, he found out, was born in 1971. No, she was born in 1975. And then Cabron was born in 1978. But here's the kicker about he and Marilyn's relationship. They ended up getting a divorce. You know, she was tired of him being on the road all the time. And when he was not on the road, he was in the studio because honestly, I feel like music was his only real true love, although he genuinely cared and loved as best he could other people. But he really would, I think, would have survived had it just been he and his music. But when they got a divorce, they were still together from time to time. And it was after the divorce that they found out that she was pregnant. Now, since he felt like he had messed up with his daughter, he made an effort to be more present in his son's life. But eventually he reverted back to his old ways. The third lady, her name was Aileen. Aileen also had a son in 1992 by the name of Eden. Now, he tried yet the third time to be more involved with that particular child. And I do believe he got a little bit more done with Eden than he ever did with the other two. Some award show was going to be coming on or be televised. But when Maurice found out that the televising or recording was supposed to take place the night of his son's graduation, and they were up for an award, maybe even several, I just don't remember. But they were up for an award, and Maurice decided to just forego the award show and go to his son's graduation. I do like that about him because at that time he had been honored several times, and you know, you only graduate high school once, so he did go there. However, I don't know what type of a relationship he had with his two sons. I don't know what type of a relationship they had with each other, or if there's a relationship between his sons and their sister. I just don't know. But as for the women, Aileen and Marilyn, he ended up having a very amicable relationship with both of them, even though the romance between them had long ended. But according to something I saw somewhere, he was with Marilyn when he passed. But I don't know how accurate that is. But yes, he had those three relationships. Now, for some reason, to me, he always seemed to have an air of mystique about him. I don't know. I know that he was a very spiritual person. He didn't really consider himself religious so much. He was big into like a lot philosophy and astrology and all of that stuff as it ties in together. Now, one time they were on tour with a group called War. And one of the members in that particular group at that time, that lineup, was, I guess he must have been devoutly religious. I don't know, but I do know that he started having Bible studies. So some of the members of Earth, Wind, and Fire one time noticed he was reading his Bible. Now, most people in both bands grew up in church, including Maurice. But Philip Bailey, Andrew Warfolk, Larry Dunn, those three from Earth, Wind, and Fire, decided to start having Bible studies with Leon. Well, one time, Maurice just happened to walk to the back of the bus where they were, and he was like, "What's up? What y'all doing?" And they told him having Bible studies. For some reason, that rubbed Maurice the wrong way. According to Philip, he said something along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing here, but Maurice said something like, "Well, that's funny. The last time I checked, God didn't have anything to do with nothing that just went on." Now, if that is what he said, that doesn't sound like a believer. I don't know. I'm just going to leave that alone. But I thought that was odd. But even Maurice realized in time that everybody really is entitled to worship the way he or she pleases. So he wasn't really, giving them any grief about having the Bible studies. He did his thing and they did theirs. That was the only big difference. Yeah, from time to time, because Maurice was the leader and the founding member of the group, there may be some the band members may have found some discrepancy in pay from time to time. Maurice talked about from time to time how they, may not get paid when they were supposed to, or how much, it costs to do the least little thing. But overall, they were okay. Now, Maurice was not a very sociable person. According to Philip, on time off in between albums and touring, they never really did anything. They didn't do much of like picnicking or backyard barbecues or hanging out and just doing what you do on your off time. Not as a group. They all went to their families and they went their different ways. They came together when they had projects to work on. So they don't really know what Maurice was like outside of work. He kept himself very private in that way. Now, fun facts here. And I'm listing them here because from here on out we're going to go downhill. You'll see in a minute. But did you know, book lovers, that at one point in time there was a female in the Earth, Wind, and Fire? She was there, albeit very briefly, but she was there. Her name was Jessica Cleaves. She at one time was in a group called Friends of Distinction. When that group broke up, I had never heard of them. And I went to try to find some music, but I can't recommend anything. Not even when she was with Earth, Wind, and Fire. I didn't. So, it's out there. I guess I should have just said I didn't care for it. So when she left them, she went on and worked with R&B funk soul groups, Parliament and Funkadelic. Now, for those of y'all who may not be familiar with that group, maybe you're familiar with their founder and leader of the group. His name is George Clinton. Now, Parliament and Funkadelics, they had songs like One Nation Under a Groove, Tear the Roof Off the Sucker, Knee Deep, and my all-time favorite, Flashlight. And since I'm saying that particular song, Flashlight, when I stop and think about it, it went along the lines of some of the stuff Earth, Wind, and Fire. I'm speaking lyrically now, just in terms of lyric, because all I can think about is like shining star from Earth, Wind, and Fire, shining star so you can see what your life can truly be. Or you're a shining star, no matter who you are, shining bright to see what you can truly be. Well, in Flashlight, they name every type of light it is. Flashlight, red light, neon light, stoplight, all kinds of lights. And at the end of the song, which is where the gem was or is for me, It says, everybody has a little light under the sun. I just thought that was everything. So no matter how disparaging life can be sometimes, if you can just remember things like that, it may give you a reason to pep back up, because yeah, the beats are great and groovy. I love to get my dance on, but I do resonate more with the lyrics. But yeah, she worked with, they had songs like them. As a matter of fact, Jessica, she performed with them on that song Knee Deep. And when those two groups stopped recording, and then how could I forget this? I think their biggest hit overall, George Clinton, I think at that time they were Parliament. It could have been Funkadelics, I really don't know. But their biggest hit was Atomic Dog. I liked it. I loved it. The first couple of years I heard it. But then it's like it was in heavy rotation for like 6 years. I kid you not. It's still hard for me to hear that song. I think it will never end. Excuse me. But anyway, she went on to work with George Clinton on his solo products as well. Now, that was the first Did You Know. Also, did you know, book lovers, that Maurice White had two nicknames? He was known by family and I guess close friends by the name of Sandy, because of his fair complexion and his hair color, his light-colored hair. Now, his brother Verdine, his brother and bandmate Verdine, he called him Reese. I don't know why, but he called him Reese, and most everybody else, if they didn't call him Maurice, they called him Sandy. I didn't know that. And, for some reason, I always, you heard of Maurice White, obviously. And then he had two brothers in Earth, Wind, and Fire, Fred White and Verdine White. But I thought that the last name White was because they were, they had both the same biological parents. So when I read this book and found out that Verdine and Fred's last names is Adams, I'm like, well, where in the world did White, how did that happen? Well, come to find out, although they shared the same mom, and Verdine Sr. took Maurician as his own, when they started to make a name, apparently it was just known that Maurice, Verdine, and Fred were all brothers, but since Maurice was the one out front most of the time, his last name was White. Verdine and Fred came to Maurice and asked him how would he feel if they went by the last name White. This was one of the things Maurice deeply regretted. He said he just, had he done it again, if he had the chance to do it again, he would have just told them to no, just stay in Adams. Not because he didn't want them to use the last name White. He just felt like it was an assault to their father. And when I say they, that I am including Maurice. One time they were somewhere, and when Verdine Sr. came backstage, someone referred to him as Mr. White. And that's when it dawned on Maurice. Well, I wished I had just, no, because they were still blood brothers. He just said that was one of his regrets. And the other regrets was the way things ended with the mothers of his children, especially his daughter's mother. And the third child, his son, Eden, he said he realizes that she was the woman he should not have let get away. He didn't say he wanted to marry her. He just said that he wished he hadn't let her get away. All right, now, It gets a little heavy from here on out. Now, I'll just warn you up front. Somewhere between 1974 and 75. Well, 1975 is when his daughter was born, but he didn't find out for years later. And then, also that year, though, his bandmate Philip Bailey's mother passed away. So that was heavy on the group because there was just camaraderie there. They were like a well-oiled machine. They all came together. But then in 1978, his mother dear gathered the family around and told them that she had been diagnosed with breast cancer. And she had decided to have a double mastectomy, and it was scheduled for the next day. He says, although everybody was at the big house, but it was just like everybody was in his or her own little world, trying to process the news. And then everybody was there when she went into surgery and stuff. I think he was with her for like maybe 3 or 4 days. Well, after that happened, he went on back to work and things resumed as usual. But then, either late 1978 or the first part of 1979, the cancer came back. And that time, she wouldn't survive it. She passed away on July 16th, 1979 of breast cancer at age 56 years old. Wow. So anyway, now, as for Maurice, in 1986, he woke up one morning and had small tremors. I didn't think any mind of it. It didn't seem to get in the way of anything he had to do. He went on about his daily routine, no problem. It went on from time to time. He would notice them, but okay, so I had a tremor. I don't know where that's coming from, but I do know that I'm trembling a little bit more. So this went on. So by 1990, though, he was finally diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. He thought, Parkinson's? Wow, why do I have Parkinson's? That's an old person's disease. I'm only 49 years old. And if I go back to 1986, at the first tremor I had, I was only 45 years old. How did this happen? I eat right. I get plenty of exercise. Maybe I don't indulge in drugs. And I get sleep. I'm pretty sure I need more than I get, but I do get sleep. I don't understand this. But it wasn't until 1998 that he decided to come out or to announce to us that he had been suffering with Parkinson's disease. I don't even know if he told the band members much earlier than he made the announcement. But now he did say one time they were out on tour somewhere. He was walking down the hall of the hotel, and he passed by a room where some of the other band members were having a meeting. When they looked up and saw him, they looked like they had just seen a ghost. So from there, he stopped traveling with them. And it wasn't because he had an ego. It was because he didn't want them to see the progression of the disease because the tremors got worse and worse. So he would go ahead of them. And any paperworks that, the contracts they had to sign or fill out, he would always make sure he did his after or until he was the only one in the room or after everybody else had signed theirs because he did not want them to see him sign his name because at that point he was having trouble holding a pen steady enough to sign his name. Well, in 1994, he announced that he would no longer be traveling with the group, but he would remain the front man in terms of all of the business transactions. And what he would not do was allow the band to carry on using the name Earth, Wind, and Fire. He just felt like he earned that right. You know, he owned the name. So he was the one calling the shots. He said he did not want that group branching off into 2 and 3 different versions of Earth, Wind, and Fire. And I wholeheartedly commend him for that. I get so sick and tired of all of these groups, and they may have had this person to step in and that person to come in, and this person is mad about something, and everybody fights over who gets to claim to use the name and all of that. Maurice, Well, eventually, though, he did consent to them to be able to use the name as long as the original members, some of the original members were still there. It took him a minute, but he finally agreed to let them, okay. He said if he had to do anything different with that, he would have someone to replace his vocals. Now, he knew Philip at that time, he was still pretty good. He could still carry. And then he named somebody else who helped sing his parts. I think he said Ralph. I think it's Ralph Johnson. Well, he just said he should have had somebody solely to pick up his parts where he could no longer perform. In 2003, his beloved father, Dr. Verdine Adams Sr., passed away. Didn't say how old he was or what he passed from, but he did say he outlived his wife by, what's that, roughly 24 years? It's rare you find a man that outlives his partner by that much, but that's what happened. All right, then in 2006, he performed with Earth, Wind, and Fire in public for the very last time. And in 2000, let's see, am I leaving anything else out? I do not believe so. So unfortunately for us, Maurice White passed away from Parkinson's disease on February 4th, 2016. At age 74, he passed away in his sleep. And I think I seen somewhere they were saying he died at home with his wife and children around. So this concludes Maurice White, My Life with Earth, Wind, and Fire by Maurice White, and I forgot that other man, Herb somebody, but the picture is up here so you can see who the other author was. And should you choose to read it, make sure you remember to read the afterwards. Also, it just goes into a little more detail about his thoughts at the end. He was nervous and afraid for only a little while. By the time he finally left, he had already made peace, and he was okay. He was okay. So, book lovers, once again, thank you so much for your support on my channel. Thank you so much. We're up to 61 subscribers. Yay, as we did it again. I know I'm getting a little too sporadic, but I do thank you. Thank you, subscribers, for being subscribed. Visitors, should you happen upon the channel, please feel free to join us. We do have fun when we get together. And by all means, everybody, please make sure to like, share, comment respectfully, and turn your notification bells on to be notified whenever I upload a video. And in the meantime, book lovers, remember this. As long as there are books around, there is always something to read. Book lovers, be safe until the next time we meet, and God bless.